Introduction. Understanding Pakistan. Let's begin with the big question. Why does Pakistan seem so hard to understand for outsiders? Some say it's chaotic, fragile, even on the brink of collapse, but it still survives. What makes it such a puzzle?
That's the essence of Anatol Lieven's argument. Pakistan looks weak on the surface: terrorism, corruption, poverty, political instability, but it's tougher than it appears. Its resilience lies in strong societies and local structures that keep it alive, even when the state struggles.
Strong societies, but a weak state. That sounds contradictory. Can you explain what he means?
Sure, the Pakistani state often fails to enforce laws or provide services consistently. Yet at the same time, families, clans, kinship networks, and tribes provide order and support. People survive through these networks, not because of the state, but often despite it. This creates a paradox. The government looks fragile, but society itself is remarkably durable.
Interesting. But doesn't that also make it difficult to reform the system?
Exactly. Because when kinship ties are so strong, people trust their biradari or clan more than the bureaucracy. Reform attempts often clash with these social loyalties. So while these bonds keep Pakistan from falling apart, they also prevent it from moving forward.
That seems to capture the phrase Lieven uses, a hard country. It's not easy to break, but not easy to change either.
Yes, precisely. Pakistan is like a fortress built on family, tribe, and local loyalty. These bonds keep people safe, but also resist modernization.
Pakistan, Afghanistan, and the Taliban. Let's talk about Afghanistan, because the introduction connects Pakistan's destiny with its neighbor. How are they tied together?
Afghanistan and Pakistan are deeply intertwined, especially through the Pashtun population. The tribal belt doesn't respect the official border, the Durand Line. Militancy and extremism spill over, creating challenges for both states. After 9/11, Pakistan became central to the global war on terror precisely because of this geography.
So, is Pakistan simply a victim of its location?
Partly, but it also used that geography strategically. The Pakistani state supported the Afghan jihad in the 1980s with U.S. and Saudi help. Later, elements of the establishment backed the Taliban, believing they gave Pakistan strategic depth against India. But this policy backfired when militants began attacking inside Pakistan.
So, Afghanistan is both a shield and a danger for Pakistan.
Exactly. Geography makes Pakistan central, but also vulnerable. That's why Lieven insists we cannot understand Pakistan without looking at its regional entanglements.
But let's return to resilience. Many analysts keep predicting Pakistan's collapse. Why hasn't it happened?
Because the foundations of everyday life are stronger than outsiders think. Agriculture still sustains millions. Remittances flow from workers abroad. The army keeps order at critical moments, and kinship networks act like a welfare system. For example, if someone loses a job, their extended family supports them. This safety net prevents total breakdown.
So, unlike a fragile state in Africa where institutions collapse and people are left on their own, Pakistan has these invisible bonds holding it together.
Precisely. It may look chaotic, but it's deeply rooted. The family and clan system is like an invisible glue that outsiders underestimate.
Let's unpack this phrase more. What exactly does weak state, strong societies mean in Pakistan's context?
The Pakistani state struggles with taxation, policing, and service delivery. For instance, the tax to GDP ratio has often been below 10%, among the lowest in the world. Less than 1% of citizens pay income tax. Yet society fills the gaps. Kinship ties resolve disputes, provide loans, secure jobs, and protect individuals.
So the state doesn't collapse because people don't depend on it as much as in Western countries.
Exactly. In the West, if the state fails, society collapses. In Pakistan, if the state fails, people turn to kinship and local solidarity. That's why it endures.
A lot of outsiders talk about feudal lords dominating Pakistan. Is that really true?
Lieven says it's exaggerated. While landlords remain influential, especially in Sindh, the picture is more complex. In Punjab, many so-called feudals are actually medium landowners integrated into local politics. Urbanization, migration, and remittances have also weakened purely feudal power.
So feudalism is more of a political slogan than a total reality.
Exactly. It's true that landlords influence elections, but they rely on biradari networks as much as land ownership. Politics is shaped less by feudal coercion and more by kinship mobilization.
Then how does Pakistan actually work if the state is weak and feudals are not all powerful?
It works through negotiation and balance. The government makes deals with elites, landlords, tribes, and religious groups. Instead of a single strong authority, Pakistan functions through a constant bargaining process. Everyone gets just enough to stay on board, even if inefficiency persists.
So that's why Lieven calls it a negotiated state.
Yes, Pakistan survives not through strong institutions, but through compromises between the army and civilians, landlords and peasants, urban and rural groups, even religious and secular forces.
The book also highlights water. Why is the Indus River so important?
Because it's the lifeline of Pakistan. The Indus irrigates Punjab and Sindh, producing the food that sustains the country. Without the river, Pakistan's survival would be impossible. But this dependence also creates tensions between provinces, between landlords and tenants, and even with India upstream.
So water is as political as it is natural.
Absolutely. Control of water channels, power, and wealth. That's why Lieven calls Pakistan's reliance on the Indus a gamble. If climate change or mismanagement disrupts it, the entire system could face crisis.
What about the economy? It seems both fragile and somehow functioning.
That's right. Pakistan struggles with low investment, corruption, and debt. Yet agriculture, remittances, and the informal economy keep it alive. Millions of Pakistanis work in the Gulf and send money home, providing a vital cushion. And within Pakistan, informal businesses, small shops, transport, trade thrive outside state regulation.
So again, survival comes not from the state, but from society.
Exactly. It's messy but resilient.
From Lieven's perspective, what does everyday life in Pakistan look like?
He emphasizes that despite poverty and instability, daily life is surprisingly stable. People live within strong family circles, practice hospitality, and endure hardships with resilience. There's violence, yes, but there's also solidarity. Western observers often miss this balance because they focus only on terrorism or political crises.
So the country feels chaotic from the outside, but routine from the inside.
Precisely. Life goes on, children go to school, markets open, weddings take place. That's the hidden normality that sustains Pakistan.
Before we conclude, tell me about kinship. Why does Lieven give it so much importance?
Because kinship is the real foundation of Pakistan. Political parties mobilize votes through biradari networks. Jobs are secured through relatives. Even justice is often delivered within the clan. This system provides stability, but blocks meritocracy and reform. It's Pakistan's greatest strength and greatest weakness at the same time.
So kinship is like both glue and a chain.
Exactly. Glue, because it holds society together. Chain, because it prevents transformation.
So what's the final message of this introduction?
The message is that Pakistan is neither about to collapse nor about to transform radically. It's a hard country, hard to govern, hard to change, but also hard to destroy. Its weak state and strong societies create resilience, but also stagnation.
Which means that any analysis of Pakistan must move beyond cliches of failure or success.
Exactly. Pakistan is a land of paradoxes. Poor but resilient, unstable yet enduring, weak in state capacity but strong in social bonds. To understand it, one must look beyond headlines and see the complex fabric of family, tribe, religion, and geography that keeps it alive.
A country surviving on its own unique logic.
Yes, and that's why Lieven calls it a hard country.
Chapter 1. Introduction. Understanding Pakistan. Many people outside Pakistan say this country is weak, unstable, or always close to collapse. But somehow it never falls apart. Why is that?
That's the main question Anatol Lieven tries to answer. From the outside, Pakistan looks fragile. Terrorism, corruption, poverty, weak governments. But if you look closely, you see something else. Strong families, strong social bonds, and local traditions that keep the country alive. That's why he calls it a hard country.
What does it mean when we say Pakistan has a weak state but strong societies?
It means the government often fails to do basic things, like collect enough taxes, provide good schools and hospitals, or make sure laws are followed. For example, only about 1% of Pakistanis pay income tax. That's very low compared to most countries. But the reason Pakistan doesn't collapse is because people don't depend only on the government. They depend on their families, their biradari, kinship groups, and their local communities. These groups provide help in times of need, whether it's money, jobs, or protection. This system is not perfect, but it keeps life going even when the government is not working well.
So when the state is weak, society steps in.
Exactly. Families and kinship networks act like a safety net. If you lose your job, relatives will help. If you face a problem, elders will mediate. This system is not perfect, but it keeps life going even when the government is not working well.
But why do so many outsiders predict Pakistan's collapse?
Because they only look at the government and see weakness. They miss the fact that everyday life continues because of these strong social networks. Look at the economy. It has problems, but millions of small shops, farmers, and workers abroad sending money keep it running. Look at security. Yes, there is violence, but most people live ordinary lives, working, studying, marrying, and celebrating festivals.
So Pakistan is not a failed state, but more like an informal one.
Exactly. It looks messy and disorganized, but it's more stable than people think.
Some people say Pakistan is controlled by feudal lords. Is that true?
Not completely. In Sindh, big landlords do have power, but in Punjab, most so-called feudals are actually medium-sized landowners. They get votes not just because of land, but because of biradari ties.
So it's not just about land ownership.
No, it's about relationships and kinship. Even in cities, people often vote based on family or clan loyalty. That's why saying Pakistan is run only by feudals is too simple.
If the state is weak and feudals aren't fully in charge, how does Pakistan actually run?
It runs through constant negotiation. The army, politicians, landlords, businessmen, and religious groups all bargain with each other. No single group can fully control the country. That's why Lieven calls it a negotiated state. Instead of strict rules, Pakistan works through deals and compromises. This system is inefficient, but it prevents total collapse.
So Pakistan survives because of balance, not because of efficiency.
Exactly. The balance keeps everyone just satisfied enough to avoid breakdown.
What role does Afghanistan play in this story?
A big one. The Pashtun population lives on both sides of the Pakistan-Afghanistan border. The border itself, the Durand Line, is not respected by local tribes. This makes Pakistan's security closely linked to Afghanistan. In the 1980s, Pakistan supported the Afghan jihad against the Soviets, with the help from the US and Saudi Arabia. Later, parts of Pakistan's establishment supported the Taliban to secure influence in Afghanistan. But this policy backfired when militants started attacking inside Pakistan too.
So, Afghanistan gives Pakistan both influence and instability?
Exactly. It's both an asset and a danger. Lieven also talks a lot about water. Why is the Indus River so important?
Because it's Pakistan's lifeline. The Indus irrigates Punjab and Sindh, producing most of the food. Without it, Pakistan couldn't survive. But it's also a source of tension between provinces, between landlords and farmers, and even with India upstream.
So it's both a blessing and a risk.
Exactly. It's both an asset and a danger. Pakistan is gambling on the Indus. If climate change, drought, or mismanagement disrupts it, the whole country could face a crisis.
How does the economy fit into this?
The formal economy is weak. Corruption, low investment, and heavy debt are major problems. But the informal economy keeps people alive. Millions work abroad and send money home. Small businesses and farming provide daily survival. So while Pakistan often faces financial crises, people keep managing through their own networks.
From Lieven's point of view, what is everyday life like in Pakistan?
Surprisingly normal. Despite terrorism or political fights on TV, daily life continues. Children go to school, markets are busy, people attend weddings. Outsiders see chaos, but insiders seek continuity.
So Pakistan looks unstable from outside, but stable from inside.
Exactly. That's the paradox.
You keep mentioning kinship. Why is it so central?
Because kinship is the real foundation of Pakistani society. Politics, business, even justice often depend on family and clan ties. Political parties rely on biradari networks to mobilize voters. Jobs are given based on relationships. Disputes are solved by elders rather than courts. This creates stability, but also blocks change. Meritocracy suffers because family loyalty comes first. Rule of law suffers because clan influence is stronger than the state.
So kinship is both Pakistan's strength and weakness?
Exactly. It's glue that holds society together, but also a chain that stops reform.
Chapter 1 Conclusion. So after all this, what's the main lesson from the introduction?
The lesson is that Pakistan is neither collapsing nor transforming. It's a hard country, hard to destroy, but also hard to change. Its state is weak, but its society is strong. Its people survive not because of efficient institutions, but because of family and community. Its geography gives it importance, but also danger. Its water sustains it, but also creates tension. Its economy struggles, but survives through informal networks and remittances. So while Pakistan often faces financial crises, people keep managing through their own networks.
So weakness and strength are mixed together.
Exactly. What looks like dysfunction is also survival. Outsiders see fragility, but insiders know resilience. That's why Lieven argues Pakistan is unique. It doesn't fit the usual picture of a failing state.
And that's why he calls it a hard country, messy, stubborn, but enduring.
Yes. Understanding Pakistan means accepting this paradox. It will not collapse easily, but it will not reform easily either. It's both tough and stuck at the same time.
Chapter 2. The Struggle for Muslim in South Asia. When we talk about Pakistan's creation, one phrase is often repeated: Islam in danger. What does that mean in the context of South Asia?
That phrase was central to Muslim politics in British India. Muslims were a minority, and many leaders feared being dominated by Hindus after independence. Islam in danger became a rallying cry, not just about religion, but about identity, culture, and survival in a Hindu-majority region.
So it was less about pure theology and more about political fear.
Exactly. It wasn't simply about religious practice, but about political power and social status. Many Muslims worried that if Hindus controlled everything—economy, education, government— Muslim communities would lose their place. The slogan captured that anxiety and turned it into a movement.
But not all Muslims agreed on how to respond, right?
Correct. Some argued that Muslims should modernize, get educated, and compete with Hindus on equal terms. Others believed the only way to be safe was to have separate political rights, separate electorates, reserved seats, or even a separate state. There were also religious scholars who wanted politics to follow Islamic law more closely, while secular leaders pushed for a broader cultural and political definition of Muslim identity.
That must have created divisions within Muslim politics itself.
Absolutely. There were modernists, traditionalists, nationalists, and religious conservatives. But over time, the demand for some form of separation gained strength, especially as Congress politics became more dominated by Hindu leadership.
So how did this lead to the idea of Pakistan?
Slowly and gradually. At first, Muslim leaders only wanted safeguards within a united India. But as negotiations failed and trust declined, the idea of a separate homeland grew stronger. The Muslim League under Jinnah transformed the fear of domination into the demand for Pakistan.
Did Jinnah himself always believe in partition?
Not from the beginning. Jinnah was once called the ambassador of Hindu-Muslim unity. But over time, he became convinced that Muslims needed their own political space. By the 1940s, he was arguing for a separate state to protect Muslim rights.
So Pakistan was born out of fear as much as out of hope.
Exactly. It was both a defensive project, protecting Muslims from Hindu dominance, and an ambitious one, creating a new nation based on Muslim identity.
Once Pakistan was created in 1947, what challenges did the new state face?
The challenges were enormous. The country was divided into two wings, East Pakistan and West Pakistan, separated by more than 1,000 miles of Indian territory. Millions of refugees crossed the borders, leading to chaos and violence. The new government had very few trained administrators since most civil servants were Hindu and stayed in India. The economy was weak, and the state machinery had to be built almost from scratch.
That sounds overwhelming. How did Pakistan manage to survive those first years?
Survival was possible because of two things: the determination of leaders and the strength of society. Refugee communities, for example, worked hard to rebuild their lives. Kinship and community networks once again played a big role in absorbing shocks. But politically, the new state struggled to define what it meant to be Pakistani.
What do you mean by that? Wasn't Pakistan simply a Muslim country?
Yes and no. Pakistan was created in the name of Muslims, but not everyone agreed on what that meant in practice. Should it be an Islamic state governed by Sharia, or a modern state where Muslims could live freely without Hindu domination? This debate has continued throughout Pakistan's history.
I guess this is where leaders like Liaquat Ali Khan and later Bhutto tried to give direction.
Exactly. Liaquat Ali Khan, Pakistan's first prime minister, pushed for the Objectives Resolution, which tied the state to Islamic principles, but kept flexibility for democratic governance. Later leaders faced the same tension: how to balance religion and modern statecraft.
And then we come to Zulfikar Ali Bhutto. What was his role in the struggle?
Bhutto was a fascinating figure. He came from a feudal background in Sindh, but presented himself as a populist leader. With slogans like Roti, Kapra or Makan, bread, clothing, and shelter, he tried to give the poor a sense of empowerment. He nationalized industries, expanded education, and gave people hope.
But he also made compromises with religious groups, didn't he?
Yes, that was part of the paradox. Bhutto was modern and secular in outlook, but to gain support, he declared Ahmadis as non-Muslims, banned alcohol, and made concessions to clerics. These decisions strengthened religious forces in politics, which later limited Pakistan's ability to stay secular.
So even a modern leader couldn't escape religious politics.
Exactly. Religion was too central to Pakistan's identity to be ignored. Every leader, whether secular or conservative, had to deal with it.
And then Zia-ul Haq took this much further, right?
Absolutely. Zia came to power through a military coup in 1977. Unlike Bhutto, he fully embraced Islamization as state policy. He introduced hudud laws, promoted madrasa education, and aligned Pakistan closely with Islamist groups, especially during the Afghan jihad against the Soviets.
So under Zia, Pakistan moved closer to being an Islamic state in practice?
Yes, but it was relective. Islamization under Zia strengthened conservative forces, but it was also used as a tool for political control. By giving clerics and Islamist parties more influence, Zia secured his rule. But he also left behind a society more polarized, with deeper divisions between liberals and conservatives.
So if we step back, what does this whole chapter tell us about Pakistan's early struggle?
It tells us that Pakistan's creation was not just a historical accident, but the result of long struggles by Muslims in South Asia to protect their identity. The slogan "Islam in Danger" reflected real fears, but also shaped politics in ways that still matter today. After independence, leaders from Liaquat to Bhutto to Zia all tried to define what being Pakistani meant, but none fully resolved the tension between religion and state.
And this tension continues today?
Yes. It's still at the heart of Pakistan's politics. Should Pakistan be a modern, democratic state with Muslim identity, or a state ruled by strict Islamic law? That debate started in the early 20th century and is still alive. Now, Chapter 2, Conclusion.
So how can we summarize this chapter?
The story of Muslim South Asia shows why Pakistan was created and why it remains so complex. It was born from fear of Hindu domination, but also from a vision of Muslim unity. From the start, Pakistan had to answer a big question. What does it mean to be a Muslim state? Liaquat Ali Khan gave one answer: combine Islam with democracy. Bhutto gave another: use Islam, but also socialism and populism. Zia gave a very different one: Islamization as state policy. None of these answers solved the problem completely, because the tension between faith and politics runs deep.
So Pakistan's birth was not just about independence, but about defining identity.
Exactly. And that identity remains contested. The struggle of Muslim South Asia didn't end in 1947. It continues inside Pakistan today. That's why understanding this chapter is essential to understanding the country itself.
Chapter 3. Justice. Justice is one of the biggest concerns in Pakistan. People often complain that the courts are slow, the police are corrupt, and the law only works for the rich. Is that the full picture?
It's true that Pakistan's formal justice system has big problems. Cases drag on for years, sometimes even decades. Police often protect powerful people instead of ordinary citizens. But at the same time, Pakistanis have other ways of finding justice. Many disputes are solved by local elders, jirgas, or community negotiations, rather than formal courts.
So even though the state system is weak, society creates its own ways of resolving conflicts?
Exactly. That's why Lieven says Pakistan is a negotiated state. People don't always depend on official institutions. They often rely on custom, kinship, and informal agreements. It's not perfect, but it keeps life moving when the formal system fails.
Let's talk about these customs. How do they actually work?
In villages, if two families have a dispute, say over land, marriage, or even a fight, the elders call a jirga or panchayat. The sides present their case, and the elders decide on a settlement. The decision might not follow the written law, but it usually reflects local values and maintains peace in the community.
But sometimes these jirgas are criticized, right? Especially when they order punishments that look harsh or unfair.
Yes, that's true. Some Jirga decisions, like giving a girl in marriage to settle a feud, are very controversial and often illegal under Pakistani law. Critics say these practices violate human rights, especially for women. But many villagers see them as practical solutions that avoid long and expensive court cases.
So there's a clash between tradition and modern law.
Exactly. And that clash defines much of Pakistan's justice system. People want fairness, but they don't always trust the courts to deliver it. So they turn to traditional systems, even when those systems are problematic.
What about the police? How do they fit into this picture?
The police in Pakistan have a bad reputation. Many people see them as corrupt, demanding bribes, or favoring the powerful. But at the same time, the police are also deeply connected to society. They are part of the same kinship networks. So often, instead of acting as neutral officers, they act as brokers between communities.
That sounds like the police are more negotiators than enforcers of the law.
Exactly. A police officer might not act by punishing someone strictly by law, but instead mediate a deal between two parties. That may seem corrupt to outsiders, but for locals, it often feels more effective than waiting years for a court decision.
But what about people who don't have influence? Doesn't that system favor the rich and connected?
Sadly, yes. The poor often suffer most because they lack connections. If a wealthy landowner is in conflict with a farmer, the police are likely to side with the landowner. That's one reason why ordinary people sometimes admire militant groups or religious leaders who promise quick justice.
This reminds me of the lawyers' movement in 2007. That was about justice too, right?
Yes, that was a turning point. When General Musharraf removed Chief Justice Iftikhar Chowdhury, lawyers across the country protested. They demanded independence of the judiciary and respect for the rule of law. It was one of the few times ordinary Pakistanis strongly supported the legal system.
Did the movement actually change the system?
It raised awareness and gave the judiciary more confidence, but it didn't solve the deeper issues. Courts are still overloaded, corruption still exists, and many cases remain stuck for years. But it showed that Pakistanis care deeply about justice and are willing to fight for it.
Let's talk about religion. How does Islamic law fit into Pakistan's justice system?
That's another layer of complexity. Pakistan's constitution says no law can be against Islam. Over time, especially under Ziaul Haq, laws like the Hudud ordinances and blasphemy laws were introduced. These laws gave religious groups more influence and shaped how justice is practiced.
But have these laws improved justice?
Not really. In fact, they created more problems. For example, Hudud laws made it difficult for women to prove rape cases because they required strict evidence. The blasphemy law is often misused for personal revenge. These laws were supposed to make justice more Islamic, but in reality, they often added fear and abuse.
So religion became another tool of politics rather than just a moral guide.
Exactly. Instead of creating fairness, these laws often gave more power to extremists and opportunists. That's why justice in Pakistan is such a contested issue, caught between custom, politics, and religion.
But despite all these flaws, Pakistan hasn't collapsed. Why?
Because again, society finds ways to manage. Even when courts are weak, people negotiate. Even when police are corrupt, families use influence to protect themselves. It's not ideal, but it's survival. And sometimes it's more practical than waiting for perfect justice.
Do you think people actually prefer this informal system?
Many do, because it feels faster and closer to their values. But at the same time, people also dream of a fair and strong legal system. That's why movements like the lawyers' protest gained so much support. Pakistanis don't reject modern justice, they just don't trust it yet.
If we look at this chapter as a whole, what's the main lesson?
The main lesson is that justice in Pakistan is not simple. The formal system is weak and slow. The informal system is effective but sometimes unfair. Religion adds another layer, making things more complicated. In the end, Pakistanis survive by mixing all three: custom, state law, and religion, depending on the situation.
So once again, it's a picture of resilience and contradiction.
Exactly. Pakistan is not lawless, but it's not lawful in the Western sense either. It's a negotiated country where justice is found through compromise, influence, and community power. That keeps the system alive, but it also prevents real reform.
Chapter 3, Conclusion. How would you sum up the chapter on justice?
Justice in Pakistan shows the same paradox we saw earlier: weakness at the top, strength at the bottom. Courts and police are slow and corrupt, but communities create their own systems. Religion adds authority, but sometimes makes things harsher. The result is messy but workable.
So Pakistanis get by, but they don't always get justice.
Exactly. Justice exists, but in different forms. It may not always be fair, but it prevents total chaos. The challenge for Pakistan is to reform the formal system so that people trust it more than the informal one. Until then, justice will remain a mix of survival, negotiation, and compromise.
Chapter 4, Religion. Religion is central to Pakistan's identity, right? After all, the country was created in the name of Islam.
Absolutely. Pakistan is the only modern state founded directly on religion. Its very creation was tied to the idea that Muslims needed their own homeland. So religion has always been at the heart of politics, society, and even daily life.
But is religion in Pakistan just one thing? Or are there many sides to it?
That's the key. Religion in Pakistan is not simple or uniform. It's diverse, sometimes peaceful, sometimes political, sometimes even violent. You have traditional Sufi practices with shrines and saints that attract millions of followers. You also have reformist groups, like the Jamaat-e-Islami, which focus on political Islam. Then there are militant groups who use religion to justify violence.
Let's start with the Sufi side. How important are shrines and saints in Pakistan?
Very important. Across Pakistan, especially in Punjab and Sindh, you'll find shrines of saints who are believed to have spiritual power. People visit them to pray for health, wealth, children, or protection. Festivals at shrines bring huge crowds with music, dancing, and devotion. These traditions are centuries old and deeply rooted in local culture.
But I've heard reformist groups criticize these practices. Why?
Reformist and fundamentalist groups argue that visiting shrines, singing qawwalis, or asking saints for help is un-Islamic. They call it superstition or even shirk, associating partners with God. For them, Islam should be pure, scriptural, and free of local customs. This creates tension between traditional Sufism and reformist movements.
Does this tension have political effects?
Yes, very much. Political parties often ally with shrine families because these families command loyalty from thousands of followers. At the same time, reformist parties like Jamaat-e-Islami or movements like Deobandis try to weaken that influence. So religion is both spiritual and political in Pakistan.
You mentioned Jamaat-e-Islami. What role do they play?
Jamaat-e-Islami is one of the oldest Islamist parties. It was founded by Abul Ala Maududi before partition. The Jamaat believes Islam is not just a faith, but a complete system of life, including politics, economy, and law. They want Pakistan to be an Islamic state based on Sharia. But interestingly, despite their influence in universities and among professionals, they have never done very well in national elections.
Why do you think that is?
Because most Pakistanis are religious, but not radical. They respect Islam, but don't want strict Islamist rule. They prefer leaders who can deliver jobs, stability, and services. The Jamaat has often seemed too ideological and disconnected from people's daily needs.
And what about more militant groups?
Militancy became powerful during the Afghan Jihad of the 1980s. Groups were trained and funded to fight the Soviets. Later, many of them turned their guns inward, attacking Pakistanis or promoting sectarian violence. Some claim to fight for Islam, but their actions often harm ordinary Muslims.
How has sectarianism developed in Pakistan?
This is a very painful part of Pakistan's religious story. Shia and Sunni communities have lived together for centuries. But since the 1980s, sectarian violence has increased. Saudi Arabia and Iran both supported different groups, turning Pakistan into a battlefield for their rivalry. Attacks on mosques, processions, and religious leaders became common.
That must have created fear across society.
Absolutely. Many people avoid openly identifying their sect, especially in sensitive areas. But despite the violence, the majority of Pakistanis reject sectarian hatred. Most people just want peace and stability.
Let's step back. If Pakistanis are so religious, why don't they all support religious parties?
That's one of the paradoxes of Pakistan. People are deeply religious in their personal lives. They pray, fast, give charity, and visit shrines. But when it comes to politics, they often prefer mainstream parties like the PPP, PMLN, or now PTI. Why? Because these parties promise designment, infrastructure, and governance, even if they fail to deliver fully. Religion shapes culture and society, but political Islam has limited success at the ballot box.
So religion is powerful socially, but weaker politically.
Exactly. It shapes values, language, festivals, and identity. But politically, Pakistanis vote more on local connections, kinship, and service delivery. Religious slogans matter, but they don't decide everything.
Still, religion influences the state, doesn't it?
Yes. Pakistan's constitution declares Islam the state religion. The Objectives Resolution makes it clear that sovereignty belongs to God. Religious scholars sit on councils that review laws for compatibility with Islam. So even if religious parties are weak, the state itself is framed around Islamic principles.
And what about ordinary life? How does religion show up daily?
Religion is everywhere. The call to prayer echoes 5 times a day. Ramadan changes the rhythm of life across the country. Islamic charity, zakat and sadaqah, supports millions of poor people. Families consult religious leaders for marriage, funerals, or disputes. Even television dramas and news channels often highlight religious themes.
But sometimes religion also becomes a tool for power, right?
Sadly, yes. Politicians often use religious slogans to win support. Militants misuse religion to justify violence. Even local leaders sometimes use religion to strengthen their authority. That's why religion in Pakistan is so complex. It is both a source of unity and a source of division.
If you had to summarize, what are the 2 faces of religion in Pakistan?
One face is spiritual and cultural. Sufi shrines, charity, festivals, daily devotion. This face binds people together and gives comfort. The other face is political and militant. Parties, laws, and armed groups using religion for power. This face often divides society and creates conflict.
Chapter 4, Conclusion. So what lesson do we take from this chapter on religion?
The lesson is that religion is central to Pakistan, but it is not simple. Most Pakistanis are religious in their personal lives, but they don't necessarily want an extremist state. Sufism and shrines show the softer cultural side of Islam, while militancy and sectarianism show the harder political side.
So religion is both Pakistan's strength and its challenge.
Exactly. It gives identity, unity, and resilience, but it also fuels conflict when misused. The future of Pakistan depends on whether religion remains a source of peace and morality or continues to be exploited for power and violence.
Chapter 5. The Military. Let's be honest, the Pakistani military is not just another institution. It dominates politics, shapes the economy, and decides foreign policy. Isn't it fair to say that the military is more powerful than the state itself?
That's a strong claim. The military is indeed the most disciplined and organized institution in Pakistan, but that doesn't mean it stands above the state. It is the state in many ways, especially when civilian governments are weak or corrupt.
But that's exactly the problem. Instead of strengthening democracy, the military has repeatedly taken over power. From Ayub Khan to Yahya, from Zia-ul-Haq to Musharraf, Pakistan has lived under generals almost as much as under civilians. Doesn't that stunt political growth?
True, military rule interrupted democracy. But look at it from another angle. Every time Pakistan faced crisis, it was the army that stepped in. Civilian politicians fought among themselves, indulged in corruption, or failed to govern. The military filled the vacuum. Without it, Pakistan might have collapsed.
That sounds like justification. If the army keeps interfering, politicians will never learn. Isn't the army's dominance that prevents institutions from maturing?
Perhaps, but think about why people often support military takeovers. Many ordinary Pakistanis see the army as more honest, efficient, and patriotic than politicians. When Musharraf took power in 1999, many people celebrated. Why? Because they were tired of the endless corruption of civilian leaders.
And what happened later? Musharraf also lost popularity. Military rulers bring stability at first, but eventually face the same failures. Lack of legitimacy, lack of accountability. Isn't that the pattern?
Fair point. Every military regime starts with promises of reform and ends with disappointment. But we can't deny that the army remains the strongest pillar of Pakistan, militarily, economically, and politically.
Let's talk about the economy. The military doesn't just defend borders, it runs massive businesses, from Fauji Foundation to Army Welfare Trust, from banks to fertilizer factories. The military has its own empire. Is that fair in a country where ordinary citizens struggle?
It's true. The military has big economic interests. Retired officers, head corporations, and cantonments are like separate cities. But these businesses also provide jobs, pensions, and services. In some cases, military-run companies are better managed than civilian ones.
Still, it blurs the line. The army isn't just the defense force, it's also an economic giant. That makes it hard for civilians to challenge it. How can politicians confront generals when they control money, land, and even industries?
That's the reality of power in Pakistan. The military built itself as a parallel system because it didn't trust weak civilian institutions. Some would call it survival, others call it dominance.
And then there's foreign policy. Who decides Pakistan's relations with India, Afghanistan, or America? It's not the parliament. It's the military, and especially the ISI. Civilian leaders are often sidelined.
That's because these relations directly affect national security. The military argues that politicians don't have the expertise to deal with India or Afghanistan. Kashmir, for example, has always been treated as a military domain.
But this approach has backfired. Decades of military obsession with India created wars, militancy, and economic weakness. Instead of focusing on education or health, Pakistan poured resources into defense. Isn't that the cost of military dominance?
Yes, there have been costs. But remember Pakistan's geography. It faces a much larger neighbor, India, which has fought wars with it. Without a strong army, Pakistan might not have survived. Many Pakistanis genuinely see the military as their shield.
What about the jihadi nexus? The military and ISI supported militant groups in Kashmir and Afghanistan. Those groups later turned against Pakistan itself. Isn't that one of the darkest legacies of military policy?
That's undeniable. In the 1980s, during the Afghan Jihad,
Pakistan became the frontline state with U.S. and Saudi funding. The ISI trained thousands of fighters. It gave Pakistan influence, but also planted seeds of extremism. Later, groups like the Pakistani Taliban attacked Pakistan itself. That was a blowback the military did not anticipate.
But shouldn't the generals take responsibility? They nurtured groups for short-term gains and left society to deal with the long-term violence. Thousands of innocent lives were lost.
Responsibility is shared. Civilian governments also supported these policies. The Afghan jihad was not only a military project, it was a national one, backed by allies like the U.S. and Saudi Arabia. But yes, the military carried the main role, and the cost was heavy.
Another sensitive point, the nuclear program. Pakistan's nuclear weapons are often described as the army's crown jewel. But doesn't that give generals even more unchecked power?
The nuclear program is a matter of pride for Pakistan. It gave the country security against India and raised its global standing. The military managed it because of secrecy and discipline. But yes, it also reinforced the army's dominance.
So, to sum up, you're saying the military is both Pakistan's strength and weakness?
Exactly. Without it, Pakistan might not have survived wars and crises. But because of it, democracy has struggled to grow. The army protects the country, but also dominates it. It's both savior and obstacle.
That's a contradiction Pakistan can't escape. A strong army keeps the nation safe, but also keeps politics weak. Isn't that the heart of the problem?
Yes, that's the paradox. Pakistanis admire their army, yet also resent its power. They rely on it, yet fear it. Until civilian institutions become strong, this cycle will continue. Chapter 5. Conclusion.
So, what's the final lesson of this chapter?
The military is Pakistan's most powerful institution. It has given the country strength, discipline, and security. But it has also weakened democracy, encouraged dangerous policies, and expanded into politics and the economy. Pakistan's future depends on finding a balance, an army strong enough to defend the nation, but limited enough to let democracy grow.
In other words, Pakistan must learn how to live with its army without being ruled by it.
Exactly. That's the crossroads, a military that protects but does not dominate. Whether Pakistan can achieve that balance remains the big question.
Chapter 6. Politics. Politics in Pakistan is always messy. Parties claim to fight for democracy, but in reality, most are family-run clubs that use power for personal gain. Isn't that why people lose faith in politics?
That's a harsh judgment, but there's truth in it. Most political parties in Pakistan do revolve around powerful families. The Bhuttos in Sindh, the Sharifs in Punjab, or the feudal lords in interior Sindh. Patronage is the real currency of politics. But at the same time, this system also reflects the realities of Pakistani society.
What do you mean by realities of society? Are you saying corruption is natural?
Not corruption, but patronage. In a country where the state is weak and institutions don't deliver, people rely on personal connections. A politician isn't judged by ideology. He's judged by whether he can fix a road, get someone a government job, or protect the family in trouble. That's why kinship networks and bureaucracies matter more than manifestos.
But that's exactly the problem. When politics is based on kinship and patronage, national issues like education, health, or poverty get ignored. Leaders only care about their vote bank. Isn't that why Pakistan keeps struggling?
True, the focus is local, not national. But think about why. If ordinary people cannot rely on the state for justice, electricity, or water, they will naturally turn to their local politician for favors. The system is flawed, but it's also a survival strategy.
Still, politicians use this as an excuse to enrich themselves. Look at how both PPP and PMLN have rotated in power. Each time they promise change, but end up building personal empires.
That's a fair criticism. The PPP under Zulfikar Ali Bhutto once had a populist vision, Roti Kapra Makan, but over time it became dominated by the Bhutto family. Similarly, the PMLN grew under Nawaz Sharif into a party of industrialists and traders. Both became dynasties with loyalty to families rather than to institutions.
And then you have MQM in Karachi, a party born of the grievances of Mahajers, but which turned into a violent machine controlling the city through fear. Doesn't that show how politics becomes a weapon, not a service?
MQM is a unique case. It gave voice to urban Mahajers who felt excluded by rural Sindhi elites. But yes, it also became associated with militancy and extortion. Still, it reflects the same pattern. Politics in Pakistan grows out of ethnic, linguistic, and kinship identities rather than purely national ideology.
But when parties are so divided by identity, how can democracy ever succeed? Doesn't this create endless instability?
That's the paradox. On one hand, patronage politics keeps the system alive. On the other hand, it prevents real reform. Democracy in Pakistan survives not because it's ideal, but because it adapts to these realities.
Let's not forget the military's role. Politicians blame interference from the army whenever they fail. But isn't it also true that weak politics gives the army excuses to intervene?
Exactly. The military fills the gap whenever civilian governments collapse under corruption or infighting. Politicians say, let democracy continue no matter what. But if democracy only means dynasties and patronage, people often prefer a general.
That's why many people supported Musharraf at first, but in the end, even military rulers rely on the same politicians. Doesn't that show the cycle never breaks?
Yes, Musharraf banned parties but soon realized he needed them. He brought back the same patronage networks, especially in Punjab, to survive. It proves that no ruler, civilian or military, can ignore Pakistan's political culture.
What about the media? Hasn't it changed politics in recent years?
Absolutely. The rise of private TV channels after 2002 gave ordinary people more access to political debates. Talk shows exposed corruption, gave opposition leaders a platform, and created awareness. The lawyers' movement was also strengthened by media coverage. But media also has its weaknesses: sensationalism, bias, and sometimes spreading conspiracy theories.
Still, it's the one area where politicians are really challenged. Parliament may be weak, but on TV screens, leaders face tough questions.
True. And social media has added even more pressure. Leaders can no longer hide their actions as easily. This has made politics noisier, but also more accountable.
Yet, despite all this, ordinary Pakistanis keep complaining. Same faces, same failures. Why do people still vote for these politicians?
Because they see no better option. In rural areas, voters rely on the local landlord or tribal chief to solve problems. In cities, party loyalty and ethnic identity still matter. Even if people complain, on election day, they often vote for the same familiar names.
So in other words, democracy continues, but without real change.
Yes, it's survival politics. Parties compete, power shifts, but the basic structure of patronage remains. Pakistan's democracy is noisy but shallow. It prevents collapse, but it also blocks deep reform.
And this makes me wonder, will Pakistan ever have issue-based politics? Or will it always be stuck in biradari, patronage, and family rule?
Change is possible, but slow. Urbanization, education, and media pressure are gradually reshaping politics. New parties like PTI challenged the old system by mobilizing young voters. But even PTI had to rely on electables and kinship politics to win seats. So the system bends but doesn't break.
That sounds depressing, like there's no escape.
Not depressing, just realistic. Pakistani politics may not look like Western democracy, but it reflects Pakistani society. It's chaotic, corrupt, but also resilient. Despite coups, assassinations, and violence, elections keep happening. That in itself is a form of progress.
Chapter 6. Conclusion. So, what do we take away from this heated debate on politics?
The lesson is clear. Pakistani politics is both flawed and essential. It is dominated by families, patronage, and identity. But it also gives people a voice and prevents total collapse. The military may overshadow it, but it cannot replace it.
So democracy survives, not because it's strong, but because it's flexible.
Exactly. Pakistani politics is messy, noisy, and often corrupt, but it reflects the society it comes from. The challenge is to gradually shift from patronage to performance, from kinship to institutions. Until then, politics will remain both Pakistan's weakness and its lifeline.
Chapter 7. Punjab. When we talk about Punjab, we're really talking about the powerhouse of Pakistan. It's the biggest province, the richest province, and the most influential in politics. Doesn't that create an imbalance with the rest of the country?
You're right. Punjab dominates almost everything. More than half of Pakistan's population lives there. Most of the army comes from Punjab. Many prime ministers are Punjabis, and Lahore is the cultural capital. This dominance often makes smaller provinces feel ignored.
But is Punjab's dominance just about numbers, or is it also about history and migration?
Both. Punjab was always important because of the fertile Indus Plain, but after partition in 1947, millions of refugees came from India and settled in Punjab, especially Lahore, Faisalabad, and other cities. They boosted trade, education, and politics. Punjab became even stronger, while other provinces remained behind.
That explains resentment. Sindhis, Baloch, and Pashtuns often complain that Punjab cakes everything. Is that fair?
It's partly true. Most federal resources, jobs, and army positions go to Punjabis. The perception of Punjabi domination is real. But at the same time, Punjab is not one single block. It has different regions. Northern Punjab, near Rawalpindi, Central Punjab, with Lahore and Faisalabad, Southern Punjab, with Multan and Bahawalpur. These areas have different cultures, even different political loyalties.
That's interesting. People often treat Punjab as one united province, but internally it's divided too.
Exactly. For example, Northern Punjab is heavily linked to the army. Central Punjab is more industrial and urban, and Southern Punjab feels neglected and underdeveloped. That's why you sometimes hear demands for a separate province in the south.
But despite these divisions, Punjab always seems united when it comes to national politics. Why?
Because all these regions still share the benefits of being the largest province. No matter how much internal inequality exists, Punjab as a whole remains stronger than others. That's why politicians from Punjab, like Nawaz Sharif, often dominate national politics.
Let's talk about Lahore. People call it the heart of Punjab. How important is it really?
Lahore is more than just important, it's symbolic. It's the historic Mughal city, the cultural hub of literature, music, and art. It's also the political base of both the Muslim League and later the PMLN. For many Pakistanis, Lahore represents Punjab's pride and leadership.
But that centralization in Lahore also creates anger in smaller cities, doesn't it?
Absolutely. People in southern Punjab or interior Sindh often complain that resources are spent on Lahore's roads and metro projects while their own towns lack hospitals or schools. This fuels the narrative of Punjabi arrogance.
And what about Punjab's economy? Why is it so much stronger than the rest?
Punjab has fertile land, industrial hubs like Faisalabad, and a large share of the textile sector. The Green Revolution in the 1960s brought better seeds, fertilizers, and irrigation, which boosted agriculture. Migrant families also invested heavily in trade and business. Compared to Sindh, where feudal landlords dominate, Punjab developed a more diversified economy.
Still, inequality remains.
Big landlords in Punjab also control politics, don't they?
Yes, especially in rural areas. Landlords control votes through biradari and patronage. A poor farmer depends on the landlord for water, loans, even police protection. In return, he votes as the landlord directs. That's why feudal-style politics continues even though Punjab is more industrialized than Sindh.
But Punjab isn't just about landlords. It also produced middle-class leaders like Nawaz Sharif. Doesn't that show a difference?
True. Punjab's urban middle class is politically active. Leaders like Nawaz Sharif and later Imran Khan appeal to shopkeepers, traders, and professionals. This middle class element gives Punjab politics more diversity compared to provinces where feudalism dominates.
Let's talk about violence. People think of Karachi when they think of terrorism or crime, but Punjab has had its share too, right?
Definitely. Punjab is home to some of the most dangerous sectarian groups like Lashkar-e-Jhangvi. Southern Punjab in particular became a hub for militant recruitment. Poverty, weak governance, and religious conservatism created fertile ground for extremism.
Isn't that ironic? The richest province also produces many extremists?
It is ironic, but not surprising. Extremism doesn't only come from poverty, it also comes from ideology. Punjab has thousands of madrasas, some funded by foreign donors, spreading hard-line teachings. Militants find it easier to recruit in places where state authority is weak and religion is used as politics.
So Punjab is both the backbone of stability and the source of instability.
Exactly. On one hand, Punjab provides the army, the economy, and political leadership. On the other, it produces sectarian groups and resentment in other provinces. That's the paradox of Punjab.
Let's focus on resentment again. Do you think Punjab can ever convince other provinces that it doesn't dominate unfairly?
That's hard. Even if Punjab leaders try to share resources, the perception of dominance remains. Balochistan says Punjab takes our gas. Sindh says Punjab controls the water. Khyber Pakhtunkhwa says Punjab gets more jobs. These complaints are deeply rooted in history.
So Punjab carries a heavy responsibility. If it acts arrogantly, the federation weakens.
Absolutely. Punjab must show sensitivity. If it only looks after its own interests, other provinces feel alienated. That weakens national integration. Punjab's dominance is a fact, but whether it uses that dominance for inclusion or exclusion decides Pakistan's stability.
That makes Punjab a double-edged sword. It can unite Pakistan or divide it.
Exactly. When Punjab works with others, Pakistan moves forward. When it ignores them, separatist voices grow louder. That's why understanding Punjab is key to understanding Pakistan itself.
Chapter 7. Conclusion. So what's the main lesson of this chapter on Punjab?
The lesson is that Punjab is both Pakistan's strength and its weakness. It dominates politics, the army, and the economy, giving the country stability. But its dominance also creates resentment in other provinces, fueling divisions.
So the challenge is balance. Punjab must lead without suffocating others.
Exactly. Punjab cannot stop being the center, but it can choose how to use its power. If it shares resources and respects diversity, Pakistan stays united. If not, Punjab's strength may become Pakistan's greatest vulnerability.